around right along ringside. By golly, we're about ready to go with more big action.
Thank you very much, and welcome to Georgia Championship Wrestling. I'm Gordon Soule, your host, and we have quite an hour in store for us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Championship Wrestling at ringside. This is Vince McMahon, along with wrestling's only living legend, Bruno Sammartino.
Welcome to this week's edition of Mid-South Wrestling Television. I'm your host, Boyd Pierce, another outstanding card.
Hey, guys, and welcome back to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories. I am Ray Russell, and this week going to be a fun ride, guys, back in time to the late 70s, early 80s, as we continue on our voyage back to Angelo Poffo's ICW. I can't wait to get there. And in order to continue that discussion, we got to bring the man himself back onto the program. The man doing, well, I won't say all the research, but I'll give him 99% of the credit. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back the one and only Mr. Steve Crawford.
Hey, as always, it's my pleasure to be here doing my favorite thing in the world, talking about ICW wrestling, man.
Favorite thing in the world? Wow, that's saying a lot, Steve.
Well, you know, I'm a man of few interests. What can I say?
Well, if you were going to pick a wrestling promotion to have fun with, it would certainly have to be ICW. And you get that right from the beginning of the intro to the TV shows, right? Like everything that you could ever ask for in the world of wrestling wrapped all into one 60-second music video there at the beginning of the program.
Oh, yeah. You know what? The intro a lot of times was actually the best thing about the hour-long program. But yeah, whoever edited that intro, it was fantastic.
I don't know that there was ever a better intro to like if you just wanted to hook somebody, the battle royals, the chaos, the people getting their heads split open, the wrestling bear, you know, people in bumblebee costumes and coming out of boxes and midgets dressed up as God knows what. I mean, it was total chaos. It was amazing. It was pro wrestling entertainment at its finest.
Well, and you know, that was before the era when people were tracking down copyright. So they've got that theme from the Midnight Express. Right. Chased by Giorgio Moroder. So that was a cool song to play over, you know, all those wild images that were going on. So yeah, that's fun stuff.
Well, last time out, guys, if you want to go back to episode 1 of the project, that is episode 108 of Regional Wrestling, Steve really did a great job breaking down the early inception of the ICW, and in comes the all-star crew from Knoxville. They kind of merged together, and Angelo Poffo is well on his way. We talked a lot about the frugality stories. I'm sure more will come along. I've already gotten a couple sent to me. I just need to kind of clean them up a little bit before we discuss those. So we've got some more coming in the future. I've also been working on back details. Steve, I sent you a few little blurbs on some of the announcers yesterday.
Yes.
Specifically Edgar Wallace. I had to confirm that I didn't think the announcer was the same guy as who I had looked up, but sure enough, they're all the same human being. So looking forward to getting there at some point as well. But last episode, why don't you give everybody just a really quick overview of maybe some of the things we tackled?
Well, you know, we talked about how they started in kind of Georgetown, Kentucky as just this weird little weekly small town promotion. They were working with Dale Mann, who's, you know, infamous or famous in Kentucky wrestling circles for a number of reasons.
He may or may not have murdered a few people.
May or may not. You think things happen.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Somehow the two alpha males, Dale Mann and Randy Savage, did not become best friends, and so the Poffos said, "Hey, we can build our own ring. We'll just get the dimensions off of Dale's ring, make our own." And so they did that, and then, you know, luckily for them, the best thing in the world that could happen was the split in Knoxville, and they were able to, you know, immediately start. You know, the Poffos started working in Knoxville. The Knoxville talent started working with the Poffos. So you had, you know, the foundation, just really, you know, good talent, as we talked about. I mean, people who would go on to do, you know, exceptional things in the world of wrestling. And they were all right here in this weird little tiny outlaw promotion in Kentucky. It's fascinating.
You talk about getting the dimensions from Dale Mann's ring, and we did discuss that on the last episode. And somehow I have these visions of Randy Savage with a handsaw cutting the 2x4. Bear down on it, Lanny. Hold the other side. You know, it's amazing what people will do to you know, make things work. And they built their own ring, and off to the races we were. We told some fun little tidbits about, you know, people sharing rooms, and I had to ask Bob Roop on the recent Wrestling Stoop episode to reconfirm those stories, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I was never part of that, but I was totally aware of it." And I guess how did they make them all fit? A lot of people were asking me online after you told that story, Steve, and I guess Bob said they would take the mattress off the bed, 4 guys would sleep on the mattress, 4 guys would sleep on the box springs. Angelo Poffo was big to sleep underneath the sink. That was his favorite place to sleep. The promoter.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow. Crazy stuff. Yeah, and when you look back on that promotion, I mean, poor Bob Roop does just not fit in with what they're doing.
No, it's like you just take an Olympian who had, done everything he had done in Florida and whatnot and just kind of drop him, even Bob Orton really, but Bob Roop, I mean, just his personality alone, just drop him right into this ICW world. Just unbelievable.
Yeah, he was definitely the odd man out. You could tell his heart really wasn't into what was going on there. He had known what it took to be successful in a big league promotion, and he knew pretty quickly that wasn't going to be it. Yeah,
you're riding high. You're booking San Francisco. You're nearly selling out the Cow Palace with Kevin Sullivan, and then a few mistakes later, and boom. Here you are working across the ring from Wee Willie, but that is what
That's right. Yeah, you're doing some spot show in some podunk Kentucky town for, the $200 a week guarantee or whatever it was. So.
Bob told a story one time, and, because I don't know if we're going to touch on it as we go through here, because I don't know if it had happened at this point, but I guess they do an injury angle at some point with Bob where his leg or arm or something was in a cast. And he drives about 6 hours from wherever he's staying all the way to the spot show. And he gets there, and Angelo's like, no, that angle hasn't aired here yet in this city. You can't be here. And he just sends Bob back on his way 6 hours back to the other side of the state. I go, fuck that, man. I mean, fuck that.
Oh, my God. Yeah, 12-hour. That's brutal. That's a brutal day right there.
And you don't get a penny for it, right? No gas money, no trans. As they say.
Yeah, got to know when the tapes run.
Well, I've been putting together a lot of stories, so we've got a lot of great angles and stories coming in the future episodes, but I'm going to see what Steve has in store for us this week. We talked a lot about 1979, getting things off the ground, Steve, but I'll let you take it away and kind of move into 1980 as things begin to come together.
Do you remember 1980? I remember 1980.
I was born in 1980, Steve.
I was born in 1965. So I was watching ICW wrestling in 1980.
I love it.
Just a few things. I said, we said at the top of the first show, we really wanted to give credit where credit's due, and we mentioned a lot of the different sources. One of the things I didn't mention, so we talked about Coco Ware coming into wrestling, and it really not related specifically to ICW, but how he started working with Stan Frazier. And that came from a brand new book from Kurt Nielsen, and it's called Howdy Neighbor, Stan Frazier and His Appetite for Life. So it's a sort of book, if you think you'll like it, you'll like it. If you're interested in the crazy life of Stan Frazier.
Oh, man, who wouldn't be?
It's a very well-written book, and I have to give Kurt props for that. And I've met Kurt. He's a super good guy. And then a lot of the Izzy Slapawitz quotes that we're going to use today are from an interview he did with the late Scott Bowden several years ago. So unfortunately, both those gentlemen have passed on, but their quotes and their memories remain. Wanted to kind of talk about Rupp Arena at the start of this program, because that was a constant theme during the run of ICW. One of their big thorns in their side, I guess, was they couldn't get regular bookings in Rupp Arena. And they felt like Jarrett was shutting them out, because Jarrett would run a monthly show. And for people who don't know, Rupp Arena is the major arena in Lexington, Kentucky, which was their home base for ICW. So ICW couldn't get into the major arena in the town where they were based out of. And so a lot of these quotes are from an article that Scott Bowden did years ago. But in February of 1980, Jarrett has a show at Rupp. The ICW guys show up outside to start kind of trouble and trying to get some publicity. And Savage tells Jimmy Hart that he's going to take Lawler out tonight. And Hart says Lawler won't be here because he has a broken leg. So that's why I know the timeline, because that's when Lawler broke his leg playing football,
right,
from Jerry Calhoun. And then Savage says, okay, tonight I'm taking out Bill Dundee. So he just went down to the... And at one of the shows later that year, Steve Cooper was actually arrested for disorderly conduct. So they would come back for months. I don't think this helped them in their goals, but here's a quote from Dave. So. Yeah, Dave Brown. I didn't quite know what to expect from Randy. The first night I had met him, I had taken the night off from the evening newscast to ride to Rupp Arena in Lexington with Lance and his wife Audrey and my wife Margaret. But as soon as we got there, there's this guy in the parking lot yelling at us. Lance says to me, "That's Randy Poffo." Russell recalled, "Who could miss him?" I hear that, "Russell!" I can't do it.
Russell! Aha!
In that raspy voice of Savage. And I'm thinking, he finally caught up with us. We had secured their time slot in Lexington, and Randy was really unhappy with all of us. Dave Brown, I remember thinking, we haven't even gotten to see wrestling or a Kentucky basketball game, and we're going to die right here at the parking lot of Rupp Arena. Then Lance goes back. We actually got back into the van and drove down into the underground parking facility at Rupp. I was legitimately scared of him because we had in effect put his family's promotion out of business. This is Lance remembering years later, right, so it's not like we put them out of business at this time. At the end of the night, the cops had already arrested some of the ICW wrestlers who showed up with Savage, so the police warned him not to even cough near us. Savage said he was going to wait for us on the Bluegrass Parkway. We walked back in the dressing room, and every wrestler had made the trip from Memphis was carrying a piece, which he's referring to as a gun. Sure. Dave and I appeared to be the only ones without a gun. I was thinking, are you kidding me? So I'm thinking that Savage is going to try to jump us on the Bluegrass Parkway. But big old Sonny King said, let me lead the way. Sonny was as tough outside the ring as he was inside it. Needless to say, we had no problems. And there's a quote from Jarrett. He said, Randy's crew did show up at Rupp Arena in Lexington, which only made them look bad to the fans coming into our arena. I had no idea if their threats to jump into the ring in our matches were fantasy thoughts or reality. They did not make that mistake. And then Cornette talking about it years later. Lexington was where all the ICW guys lived, and Jarrett ran Rupp Arena there once a month. Rupp Arena called Christy and Jarrett and said they'd gotten word that some of the ICW wrestlers had bought ringside tickets, so they had extra security. They wouldn't let them in the building. For 2 or 3 shows, the ICW guys would meet the Jarrett guys in the parking lot. Then Rupp Arena started letting the Jarrett wrestlers park inside the building. All the guys brought their guns. The boys believed, probably rightly so, most of the guys working ICW were either impaired or crazy or both. It was a constant harassment. When ICW had to close up, all of those promos worked in a way, but they made money for Jarrett instead of the Poffos. And then Izzy Slapawitz kind of puts the cherry on the top here where he says, those were crazy times. They wanted us all to go to the Jarrett show in Lexington. I wouldn't go. It's funny in retrospect, but it really wasn't funny at all. The boys only wanted to work. We weren't interested in that stuff. It really got out of hand.
Wow.
And so
a lot of people confirming the story.
Izzy's kind of the voice of reason. Izzy Slapawitz is your voice of reason for the ICW promotion.
Which you wouldn't pick him out of a lineup to be the voice of reason, but he seemed to be pretty sound outside of that whole, riot that he incited there in the Knoxville territory. But no, it's crazy looking at. Can you imagine 2 middle-aged guys with their wives going out for a night, of a good time, if you will, or whatever? Lance and Dave, poor Lance and Dave, and Randy Savage. I don't see any of the wrestlers, so I guess we'll just pick on them. Poor Lance and Dave.
Well, and I think Lance was really proud. I think he had helped get they had like a prime TV station and timing in that Lexington market, which allowed them to run, major shows. And, Rupp Arena is a huge arena. It's usually used for like basketball and concerts and things like that. Mm-hmm. So they would just load those shows with the top talent that they could bring in. So he's going in there kind of showing off with all this pride. Then you have to meet this kind of lunatic outside if you're trying to enjoy your evening.
Well, it's amazing that Randy was able to channel his lunacy, for all those years working for Vince McMahon, because I'm not saying he wasn't off the hinges a few times, obviously, but it's amazing that he was able to make that work for as many years as he did once he finally got that big break, because, man, this is some crazy stuff when you think about it. Rallying up the troops, and you know, some of these guys clearly were off their rockers, impaired or crazy or both, indeed. And so it's just an amazing period of time. Imagine, you know, this wasn't going on in some of the other territory, just like, yeah, you're coming into our city now,
Well, you know, with Vince's personality, he probably enjoyed like how out there Savage was. He probably got a kick out of it.
Pal, that's some good stuff.
That's right, pal.
Just, you know, all these guys packing guns and all this crazy nonsense going on in this one particular town because, you know, Angelo Poffo put a stake in it. He put his flag down and said, "This is our city, Lexington, Kentucky." But Jarrett's running the Rupp Arena. Okay.
There you go. In January of 1980, they debuted in Manchester, Kentucky, which was one of the more interesting venues that they would work. George Weingroff kind of sets the stage. When you come into Manchester, there's a sign that says, "Welcome to Manchester," and it's full of bullet holes. And Cornette says, they used to run Manchester, Kentucky, because they didn't have a building. This fan named Ernie Couch, he actually put up one of those pole barns in his backyard. They could seat like 400 to 500 people.
Wow.
They later called it Ernie Couch's Entertainment Center. So this guy who's this big wrestling fan basically says, "How come you can't have matches here?" He says there's no place to have them. He builds a barn in his backyard so they can have wrestling.
You can have it now, boy.
There you go. Rip Rogers. The most exciting venue was Ernie Couch's Entertainment Center. He built an arena on his property, and it held 500 people. On Super Bowl Sunday, they were lined up around the building, and we turned 300 people away. Ernie was always there. He really wasn't smart to the business. He always had a gun. It was like he was threatening to shoot the heels all of the time.
I love it.
And then I found a quote from somebody who regularly attended those shows, and he posted, his screen name was CBCSPO. This is from Wrestling Classics in May of 2021. "I was lucky enough to watch ICW Wrestling live every Sunday at Ernie Couch's Entertainment Center in Manchester, Kentucky. It was a small building in a small town. They also ran Combs, Kentucky at 12 o'clock, then Manchester at 4 p.m., and another town at 8 p.m. Wow. They ran every small town in Kentucky. So they're running 3 shows on Saturday.
Triple header. Jerry Lawler was doing double header softball games. These guys were not fucking around. Wonder how much they made for three towns in one day. What do you think?
$50-$60, I'm guessing.
Wow, okay. That's more than I thought. I wonder what cut was Ernie Couch getting a cut, you think, at all?
I'm thinking $50-$60 altogether, you know, for 3 shows.
Okay.
Not per show.
That still might be a little high, Steve, but that's okay.
Yeah, Ernie may have gotten something like the popcorn money. I don't know.
I tell you what we'll do, Ernie. You build us a barn, we'll show up, and then we'll let you watch for free. We won't charge you for the ticket.
There you go. You'll get a ringside seat every week.
Every week. You pick the seat.
Yeah.
You can be our hat guy.
And Rip Rogers kind of talked about, you know, just the shows in that area. About 20 shows a month, we ran off the Lexington TV market. We just flooded that area. We would bring the circus to the small town, and the audience would have the time of their life. So, you know, again, it's just they're running high schools, armories, pole barns, just wherever they can, you know, put on a show.
Front yards.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was kind of like backyard wrestling before backyard wrestling, wasn't it?
If there was enough room to fit the ring, they were going to get it in.
That's true. That's true. A couple of new guys that joined the ICW crew in January of 1980 was Jeff Sword and Big Boy Williams, who would stick around for quite a while. Williams would be in and out. Sword, I think, would be too. And they had an ad for the Ronnie Garvin Wrestling School.
No, thank you.
And one thing you did not want to do was go to the Ronnie Garvin Wrestling School. And one poor person that did was named Bill Martin. We'll kind of get into this.
Oh, poor Bill Martin.
Poor Bill Martin. Rip Rogers. When ICW had its beginner class, Garvin was in there sugaring guys, putting the sugar hole in them.
Yeah.
Guys were peeing their pants and pooping their pants. Lanny and George were scared to death, afraid Garvin was going to kill them. And here's a quote from Lanny in 2018. "I just ran into Bill Martin. He gives me credit. His friend Rick Cook was watching, and he watched me panic. I said, 'Let him go, for Christ's sakes. You're going to kill him.' His eyes were bulging, and I thought he was going to have an aneurysm or something. I thought I was witnessing a murder, so I had to jump in. Bill Martin said, "Thanks for saving my life that day."
Wow. Unbelievable. Well, we see what Ronnie Garvin would do on TBS to those, the job guys and things.
Yeah.
And the further down the totem pole they were, the guys that weren't necessarily trained too well, Ronnie would, go extra stiff on them, but he didn't really care who you were. He would go in there and stretch. For anybody that's curious, you can go watch any Ron Garvin squash. You're pretty much going to see him twist guys into pretzels, and that's him being kind. I can only imagine what he did when the cameras weren't rolling.
Yeah. I mean, Ronnie Garvin was not a man to be taken lightly,
No.
that's for sure. At this time, Steve Cooper was working as Savage's manager. It was, sometimes they would kind of switch, and Izzy would be his manager. I'm not sure how those decisions were made, probably just whoever was around. Mm-hmm. Lanny and George Weingroff are the U.S. Tag Team Champions, so they would defend those belts on a lot of the cards. And then sometimes it was Steve Cooper, and sometimes other people would work under a mask as, quote, the Tennessee Stud, and it was just a job guy, right? So they're making fun of the Fullers by having somebody work as the Tennessee Stud and just being like this weakling underneath job guy. ICW, gotta love it. There is some. I did find some matches from 1980 on YouTube, which is like. There are some matches from 1979, but they've got like director's commentary over them. Mm-hmm. So they're very hard to kind of watch in the flow of the match. 1980, there's a time limit draw between Bob Roops and Terry Gibbs against Savage and Rogers. I think there were probably about 15 people in the studio audience that day.
Now, were they all confirmed real human beings, or were some of those painted on? That's the question.
From the reactions, it's hard to. It could have been a Weekend at Bernie's thing, the way the audience reacted.
Oh yeah, pull the ropes, Lanny. Pull the ropes.
Yeah, it was. Woo boy. Izzy did some commentary with John Back, putting over the heels. Most of the matches, the heels were actually selling for the baby faces. Just a fun little match. At this point, Bob Orton had kind of semi-bleached blonde hair, mm-hmm. which was interesting. It's kind of looked like, the guy with dark hair who goes to the Walmart and buys a kit to bleach his hair, and it just looks weird and frizzy.
Well, I'm sure that's exactly what happened was, that's right, Daddy, thought it was a good idea. And Bob Orton just goes on down to the local Five and Dime and grabs some peroxide or something, because he wasn't going to the hairdresser, right? They certainly weren't getting paid enough to afford a hairdresser.
Yeah, one of the things that's interesting is they would refer to Savage's belt as the international belt instead of the world title a lot during this time. So at some point, it transitioned from being the international to being the world title. Orton, it was a good back and forth match between Bob Orton and Garvin. Orton hits him with a pile driver. He hits him with a chain, but Garvin still, makes his own comeback. So it's like, the don't say die baby face that's going to come back from anything. And there was an interesting squash match, the Miser versus somebody named Jimmy Dean, who I guess also wrestled as Fireball Woody. So you can look up Fireball Woody on Facebook, and he's out there, and he's proud of that squash match. Let me tell you.
He is, and he's looking for more. He's looking for more of his matches too. Fireball Woody there on Facebook. I noticed he's more of his old timey stuff there.
Yeah. They had their first show in Illinois in March, Benton, Illinois, so they're getting out of Kentucky a little bit.
Spreading out.
And there was an article in March in the Lexington Herald. It was like on a Thursday morning. They were taping four 1-hour shows that day. So, if you're old as I am, I remember when World Championship Wrestling, when World Championship Wrestling, WCW, started doing multiple tapings on the same day. It was just the worst thing in the world to the diehard fans, because they were exposing title changes and all these different things throughout the day. But ICW was ahead of their time again.
Imagine that.
And here's a quote from John Back, and I think it shows you just how passionate he was about his job here. They know how to get me involved in their battles. I can always leave. They tape their promotional announcements at our cable station, and one day asked me if I would come with them to Lexington to do their bouts, and here I am. money will cause people to do many things.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, yeah, I'm here for a check, and I'll stick around for a little while.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily a fan of this shit here, but as long as they keep paying me, as long as the check clears, I'll be here.
And I think that passion really came across as an announcer.
I think that's why he would wind up getting replaced, I would imagine.
He was no Gordon Soley or Lance Armstrong.
Brother. No, sir. Unbelievable.
So house shows, Lanny's working a lot with Rip Rogers and Savage in either tag teams or single matches. So, it seemed like, one of the problems, of course, the top guys were the top guys forever. 3 years later, Lanny and Rip Rogers are feuding, right? And Savage and Garvin are feuding. So that's one of the things that they never could get any other real main event talent into the promotion.
No, once the guys that had been blackballed started getting booked away again, they were pretty screwed. I mean, Ronnie Garvin stuck around longer than the rest of them because he had a piece of the pie still and whatnot. But once Roop and Orton leave in 1981, it really just comes down to, like you said, the same guys every night.
Yeah, it's it got stale, that's for sure. I saw some April promos. Savage cut a promo about a hair versus tear match between Rip Rogers and Bearman Rip Tyler. So I'm guessing Rip Tyler needed to pay a outstanding bill or something.
Yeah, I wonder if there was a payoff. Hopefully somebody did get their hair cut. We know it wasn't the Ripper.
We know it wasn't the Ripper. Ronnie Garvin gave this very passionate promo about Terry Gibbs, who somebody had injured in a figure 4 leg lock. Unfortunately, the more passionate Ronnie got, the harder he was to understand with his French-Canadian accent. So it almost worked against him in a way. He was almost better off just being like matter of fact
right,
than the screaming, yelling, because first, the fans aren't responding anyway. And secondly, it's difficult to understand.
Let me stop you just real quick. You talk about those 4-hour TV tapings real quick and like 15 people in the crowd. Now, we've seen 20,000 people in the WWF, tapings when they would do 3 or 4. And you could tell when you get to the end of the tapings, the fans aren't reacting like they were for the first hour as they would say for the third hour. Can you imagine on your 4th hour of ICW having these 15 people and what that sounded or did not sound like? Unbelievable.
What you want to talk about an endurance contest? that would have been a long morning, that's for sure. So, but by May, All Star Wrestling is pretty much done in Knoxville. I think ICW would go back to Knoxville, but it would be under their banner. It wouldn't be under the All Star Wrestling banner anymore. So basically, the split worked for nobody. The Fullers had to leave Knoxville, and the split crew with Garvin and Roop and Orton and everybody involved, they had to leave as well. So basically nobody benefited from that deal.
No, yeah. Fuller winds up selling to Crockett at the end of 1979. Crockett finds a couple suckers in Mulligan and Flair to take it from him. Right? No, it was Barnett. Yeah. Barnett bought it, I believe, if I remember, or took it over, I believe.
Yeah.
And he sells it to Mulligan and Flair, and then eventually Crockett just kind of takes it over from them by the end of 1981 going into 82. So, yeah, it just never really worked out after, the demise.
Yeah, and I think so much of, the exposing of the business back when that really mattered got into the newspapers and people, this is all the work and it's all BS, and didn't help anybody. So on May 20th, ICW actually did get into Rupp Arena. Rupp, I said Roop. Rupp Arena.
Gotcha.
I don't think Bob has his own arena named after him, but he's a good man, and maybe he should. But this is the card that Izzy Slapawitz would claim for years that they actually sold out the building and drew like 10,000 people. And I think Izzy Slapawitz is the only person in the world that believes that. Angelo would later say to the newspaper that they drew 2,500 in a $10,000 gate, which is respectable, but I don't think that would pay the bills for a night at Rupp Arena.
I was going to say, I wonder how much it costs to rent the arena alone.
Yeah, and of course, half of the advertised card was a $30,000 challenge to Lawler, Dundee, and Jimmy Valiant.
Half of the advertised card were matches that were not going to happen.
Right. If you visually looked at the card, that challenge took up like half.
Yeah, if you go back and look at those posters, it's insane. They spend more time promoting matches that won't happen. And then at the bottom, it's like, plus Rip Rogers versus Lanny Poffo, right? I mean,
yeah. Plus the guys that will actually be there.
Right.
June, they debuted in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, which is a town they would run actually through 1984,
85.
Yeah, 85. Right up to the point where Savage left to go to WWF at the time.
My understanding with Cape Girardeau, and I believe there was one other city too, was that at some point Angelo suckered the people of Cape Girardeau, the local TV station, into some kind of a contract. And then he became, even though they had merged kind of with Jarrett or whatever you want to call it, dissolved into Jarrett, he was forced to continue to run shows there based on the contract that he had. That's why if you go back and look at results for Cape Girardeau, yeah, Lawler would pop up every once in a blue moon, but there were cards that were basically ICW/Jarrett promotion cards, but it was Jerry saying, you go down there, that's your thing, you go fucking figure it out. And then there would be like 4 matches on the card with a bunch of masked guys with random names you never heard tell of.
Yeah. Jarrett gave Angelo the Memphis tape to run, and then they would put cut-ins with interviews, and that's where you see a lot of the early interviews with Liz, Miss Elizabeth, doing little promos and things. So she's doing advertising those type of cards at that time. All right. July on TV, Jeff Sword turned heel, and that will kind of lead to them starting the Devil's Duo later in the year. And I have to say that, the Devil's Duo were a really good presentation. They were certainly not top guys and were never really pushed hard anyplace else.
Right.
They did come back to Memphis in like the early 90s after Memphis was pretty much just, an ICW level promotion, and it was just kind of just existing, and they had a run there. But, when they matched him with Izzy and they all had the long beards and the robes, they were a very good looking heel team at that time.
Yeah, there's a few pictures of them out there, but those guys would travel together forever, talking about Doug Vines and Jeff Sword. You'd see them do jobs for Vince all the way into the early 90s, on the same TV taping. So those guys, I know they were in Mid-Atlantic at the same time. They did like a 2-week deal in Los Angeles before they realized that they were getting less there than they were getting for Angelo, I think. I don't really know how that was, but yeah, so everywhere they seemed to go they worked really well together. I thought I really enjoyed them as a heel team.
Yeah, I did too. When they lost that team, I think they lost something. They also did the deal where Angelo did sit-ups throughout an entire 1-hour TV taping. So they were, working off of his world record, 6,033 sit-ups. Here Angelo is, gosh, how old is he?
At least 50, right? At least I would.
Yeah, he's up there. he's in his 50s, and they have the little like screen box, and he's doing sit-ups for it. You got to give him some respect for being able to do that. It's
not like your world champion Bob Backlund in his prime doing the Harvard step test or whatever that was called up and down for the duration of the program. This is the promoter, the miser, if you will, sitting here doing sit-ups, promoting something that he had, set a record on maybe 3 decades prior or whatever the case was. But it's fun to see that, we just come up with anything. Just woke up that day and decided this, I guess.
Yeah, I think he said that he had to, have a certain feeling in his body, and he was like, okay, this day I can do this.
Must have slept in a real bed that night, Steve, instead of under a sink.
He wasn't looking at plumbing when he woke up in the morning. Oh, that's a nice fixture they have here at this hotel.
Wonder how much copper they took with them.
Yes. So in August, they debuted in Charleston, West Virginia, which would be another town that they would go to for years. So again, I mean, they're having some success this year and kind of spreading out the promotion and not just being, in these tiny little towns in Kentucky every night. Barry O and Terry Gibbs said, well, we've done this, and they left ICW in August. Barry famously got involved with the WWF scandals years later. Mm-hmm. And Terry had just kind of a quiet career, didn't do a whole lot.
Terry winds up, he's just kind of a journeyman after this, floating around. I know he goes through Florida. He's from the Tampa area, I believe, and he'll work some in Puerto Rico in the next couple years, and he'll wind up working for Vince from like 85 through the beginning of 88-ish, just underneath as an enhancement work, but he'll have steady work at least through really into 88.
Yeah. He stick around a long time.
It's kind of peculiar, though, where Barry O goes. His brother, Bob Orton's still here for nearly another year. So for Barry O to just pack up and leave, I wonder if that was an Angelo thing, if that was a get the fuck out of my locker room kind of deal. I don't know what the hell. It's just kind of odd to see Barry O leave town.
Yeah, maybe he wanted to eat food on a daily basis. I don't know. People get really strange about stuff like that.
Yeah, like eating.
Yeah. So in August they have a tournament for the TV title, and Bob Roop wins it. He beats Savage in the final, so that's the way Savage can do a job and still hold on to the main championship in the promotion. In a separate angle that month, Savage knocked out Garvin with a cast and took his Southeast title from him. And that was kind of a strange thing. Garvin would defend that Southeast title for years. It was the title that he took from Knoxville and kept with him. So you've got, just another belt for when you got 10 guys in a company, I don't know how many belts you really need.
Absolutely.
They had a lot.
Yeah.
And then Roop was feuding with Bob Orton Jr. at the house shows, and those were probably really good matches, I imagine.
Relive the glory days of Memphis wrestling with the Retro Wrestling Review USWA podcast. Each week, we go back in time to review USWA Championship Wrestling from the 1990s, episode by episode. Join us for watch-alongs, behind-the-scenes stories, and exclusive interviews with people who were there and lived it. Whether you grew up watching it or you're discovering it for the first time, this podcast is your ringside seat to Memphis wrestling history. It's all a part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Listen now at USWApodcast.com.
Hey guys, Ray Russell back to talk to you about all the new and exciting audio and video podcasts we've been putting together over at patreon.com/WrestleCopia. As a self-funded brand, this entire ship is powered by our patrons. It's your support that keeps all of these wonderful shows going here at WrestleCopia. And with that said, I wanted to mention that we now have 3 major tiers with tons of Patreon-exclusive next-level content for our Patreon supporters. And it all starts with the $5 all-access tier, which gets you early access to many of the weekly podcasts, at least a dozen monthly digital downloads for your viewing and reading pleasure, the insanely detailed show notes for the Wrestling Memory Grenade Regional Wrestling, and the OG Monday Warfare podcast, plus random bonus video drops, archived old-school audio watch-alongs from the early years of the brand. And if that's not all, the brand new Patreon-exclusive podcast, Ranting Raw, featuring yours truly, Ray Russell, completely uncensored, unfiltered, with honest takes, taking patron questions and addressing various topics from throughout wrestling history. It is a whole lot of fun wrapped under the all-access tier for only $5, but things get even hotter with the VIP Superfan tier. For just a few dollars more, you get everything already mentioned in the all-access tier, plus as part of the VIP tier, a whole new slew of videocast series where it's not just your typical watch-alongs. Sure, we laugh, we have fun, but we're also breaking down the history, the context, and the why behind what you're seeing. And as part of the VIP tier, you have access to Dan Gennety's Puro Resu Academy videocast, the Coliseum videocast with co-host Gene Jackson, and the Monday Warfare videocast, Raw vs. Nitro, breaking down the history of the Monday Night War. Plus, you also get the Memphis 1985 folder of goodies and all show notes for the Puro Academy podcast and Gene's retro review show. Lots to be had there at the VIP tier. But wait, there's more. For those WrestleCopia backers who crave even more from the brand, we bring you yet another level of content fit for a warrior, because it is indeed the ultimate tier, which gives you everything from the all-access pass, everything from the VIP tier, plus you will receive access to the big ones video series featuring a lengthy look and discussion into some of the biggest pay-per-views, super shows, and other events from throughout wrestling history. It's also a great place to keep up with the big events that coincide with the Monday Warfare video cast and so many other big events from years gone by. You'll also have access to the newest big hit to the Copia brand. I'm talking about Regional Rasslin Unreal, the video series. Get ready for the next level in Regional Rasslin as we dissect territory history in video form. Watch along with us. But still, even more for your money, guys. You'll also receive access to the Treasure Chest, which offers patrons the unique opportunity to download and watch select rarities from wrestling history. And for those of you who are wondering what we offer, are contemplating joining a paid Patreon membership, or simply a curious lurker, a reminder there's a free tier at our Patreon that you can join as well. Remember, guys, no subscription, cancel any time, but I think you'll like the content that we're offering there for any budget you may have. And you can sign up right now, patreon.com/WrestleCopia, or look for the QR code where available. We appreciate your support in helping us pay the bills to keep the WrestleCopia podcast network running and enabling us to continue to bring you all the quality programming that we offer.
Hey, it's Bob Smith, and guess what? The Outdated Wrestling Hour is now part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. But hey, no fear, you're still going to hear the unique guests, comedy, music, authors, journalists, funny people. Who knows who's going to end up on the Outdated Wrestling Hour? Remember, it's all new and all old. So check it out in the WrestleCopia Podcast Network and wherever you get your podcasts. Listen if you know what's good for you.
So in September, we have the debut of Buddy Landel. This is where Buddy Landel starts his wrestling career, and doesn't stay here particularly long. But
he likes to eat too.
He likes to eat, but he'll be making good money a few years from now. And
spending
he was
all
trained. Yeah, he was trained by the great Malenko. So I think he had to sell his car or something to get the money to get trained to be a wrestler.
I know he said he slept in a storefront during that period.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little later. But,
okay.
It was lean times for Boudreaux in ICW. The Garbage Savage feud, again, they're working that around through all the house shows. Lanny was no longer really in the world title picture a lot after this. He would occasionally, have those title matches, but it wasn't the big push match. Always seemed to be Garvin and Savage. Forever.
I think even Angelo at this point realized who was the star son and who was the other one. So.
Right. Yeah. September, one of the funnier things that are out there, and you can find this very easily on YouTube, is Savage and Orton cut a promo challenging Pat Patterson and Ray Stevens because for some ungodly reason, the ICW tape is being, of course, played in San Francisco.
Everybody trying to take over San Francisco.
Yes. And Savage, me and the Cowboy do everything together. We train together. We even and then he goes on to he just leaves you the imagination, all the things that he and the Cowboy do together.
All righty.
It's quite a little promo. And then we get one of the famous exposés that happened at this time. So this was Ronnie Garvin's specialty. He would always come out and expose something that we weren't supposed to know as fans. And he had this grainy studio footage from, quote, Omaha, Nebraska. And I have no idea where this was taped, but it was like a TV studio wrestling. And Lanny and Randy were out there. And he exposes that Landy and Randy are brothers. Mm. And as he's ending this expose, Savage jumps over the announcement table to tackle Garvin, and they get into it. So it's funny because when they say, oh, we've got this footage from Omaha, Nebraska, it looks like something from the 1950s because they're kind of trying to use this camera technique to make it look like really gritty old footage.
Which is funny because it's years ahead of its time as far as, they don't have the software to make this happen. And even if they did, Angelo certainly wasn't going to spring for it. So it's funny to see what they went to try to make this look realistic,
Yes. And their show debuted in Louisville during this time frame. So again, that's another market where they're going directly against
Apparently,
Jarrett.
Omaha is decades back on their technology, by the way.
Yeah, the famous late 1970s Omaha wrestling that we've all heard so much.
Of course.
No, in October, Orton wins the TV title from Roop. I've read that it happened in Louisville, Kentucky, but I don't have anything that shows that card taking place or the result, so I don't know if that was a real switch or a phantom switch. Pez Whatley was injured in storyline by Orton from a pile driver, and he starts a feud for the TV title. And then Roop was, quote, injured, and he just decided, hey, I think I'm injured in real life.
Yes.
And he took a few months off.
Now, Bob has told that story. He felt he'd been ripped off enough by Angelo at this point that he went and bought himself the necessities to create a plaster cast anytime he needed it to kind of wander into an ICW program. So he would basically drive so far to the arenas, to the TV studio, whatever the case may be, and then he would stop on the side of the road or whatever and kind of create the cast, put it on the leg. I believe it was the leg, and then and then show up. Oh, here's my injury. See, it's real.
That's pretty wild when you're
that's dedication, right? I mean, that is talking about working a gimmick.
Yeah, that's you are really, really not happy in your job when you're putting on a fake cast to say, oh, hey, I can't work. I've still got a broken ankle or leg or whatever it is.
I'd rather not be paid than wrestle for you.
That's right. It's just not worth it. November, Tom Heggie, who was wrestling as Jim Pride, left the promotion, and we had mentioned that Savage had used the name Jim Pride when he was working in Amarillo, and I think it was like 1975-ish. And then the challenge to Dundee and Tojo and Jarrett, which had been $30,000, increases to $100,000.
Inflation.
And he comes out and he's got this briefcase and it's just full of rolled up bills, and Steve Cooper's standing behind him like he's some sort of security over all this money that they have in the briefcase. And of course, the reason that the challenge went up so dramatically is they're about to debut in Memphis, and we'll talk about that here coming up in a moment.
Ooh, nice.
But I do have some quotes from Buddy Landel from a shoot interview. It was dark days. There wasn't much money. They had me living with a midget. His name was Wee Willie, and he hated me. He hated me with a pea-purple passion. He had a one-bedroom studio apartment. He was just forever being cruel to me. I thought it was his hobby just to be mean to me.
Wow.
So Landel's into the business, and he's getting ribbed by a midget every day.
That's carny wrestling, man. I mean, you're moving in with a midget to break into the business. Only in pro wrestling or the carnival circuit.
Only there. They want to say, before they had me living with a midget, Randy had a gym. It was a storefront. It had these big picture windows. Me and this female wrestler named Donna Day would sleep in the big storefront window. I'm 17 years old, and I'm making $300 a week in 1979. I never went without a meal. You have to sacrifice all the creature comforts in the world. I just constantly learn from the veterans. I really got to be around some of the best talent in the business. So, I don't know if he was really making $300 a week. That sounds high, but
yeah, I'd say so. Especially as an enhancement guy.
Right, but he was saying this late in his life, and at least he had the perspective that, hey, this got me into the business. I am working with veterans. I am learning. And, really, it's just a few short years from this, and he's getting big pushes in different places. But he was a natural.
He was. He was good at what he did.
November 27th, ICW decides to show up in Memphis. And they book the Cook Convention Center. And they have this very standard ICW card. There's nothing unique. It's Garvin versus Savage on top, Roop versus Orton, leaving Lanny and George Weingroff against the Devil's Duo, Pez Whatley versus the, quote, Mighty Yankee, and Rip Rogers versus Rick McCord. And, of course, you have the $100,000 challenge to the Jarrett crew, which they had done on television for the Memphis station. And I don't know if it was this show or the next show. They did 2 shows pretty quickly in Memphis at this time. And I'm guessing he must have got a better rate for renting 2 shows. One of these shows, they showed part of a match on television, and I swear to God, all you could see was the front row. It was all dark, and the front row was not even filled up.
Wow.
It looked like there were maybe 7 to 10 people in that building from what they showed on television.
That had to be so deflating for these guys who were going out there and putting on, you look at the undercard as like Pez Whatley and Rip Rogers, nice solid match, Rick McCord even, some nice solid matches for your opener or what have you. And I can't imagine being, talent like a Roop or an Orton who had been in Florida and done all these things. And or even Randy Savage deserves more than 10 people in the crowd. And of course you're coming into Memphis and you're screwing with Jerry Jarrett and the crew. I get that, but it's just dumbfounding.
None of those guys had any history of meaning anything in the city of Memphis.
Right.
They had done well in other places, but nobody had been a regular on a Memphis card. I mean, a few of them had made a shot or two,
Right.
So they come in there and you've got this very low budget television and you've got names that mean nothing to the city of Memphis. And this was before cable took over. And people still really viewed, Lawler and Dundee are the biggest stars in wrestling, right?
Yeah.
That's the way it was viewed back then. I'd love to see that tape again because I remember just, I'm 14, 15 years old watching at the time. And I'm like, oh, my God, what a train wreck. So here is Izzy Slapawitz talking about going into Memphis years later in his interview with Bowden. Angelo thought that Jarrett was giving us a hard time, keeping us out of Rupp Arena. Angelo said, we're going to go into the Cook Convention Center in Memphis. All of us said, Angelo, let's wait. It's too soon. We had only been on Memphis TV for a few weeks. Back then, the rule of thumb was you let your TV run for 12 or 13 weeks before you did a house show in a major city. We needed to get the boys over, especially in the case of Memphis, where Jarrett's group was over big time. We begged Angelo, wait. We went to Memphis. God knows how much money he spent on that building. Maybe 200 people showed up, possibly less. Needless to say, Angelo wasn't very happy. ICW never did well in Memphis. And I can guarantee you it was less than 200.
There were probably more people selling popcorn than there were sitting in the seats, it sounds like.
Yeah. So, again, it's just kind of dumbfounding. The Cook Convention Center is a big building.
Yeah. And that's where Jarrett would run whenever they couldn't run the Coliseum.
Right. So, that was just a huge leap of faith to say, we've got this little promotion and we've never done anything in the city and we're going to go straight to the Cook Convention Center. Not real smart.
Well, in Ernie Couch's world, if you build it, they will come, but it didn't work here in Memphis.
Right. So here's some quotes on the grandstand challenges. One of them's from your show with Bob Roop. There was a variety of reasons for doing it. One of my reasons was to embarrass Dick Slater. Also, you add what looks like a match to your card. So he's kind of defending doing that in a certain way. But I think Izzy kind of nails it. I thought it was unnecessary. It was bad for the business. We were good enough. It was something a second-rate promotion would do. We had the talent. I would take the guys working in ICW at that time against any promotion in the country, and no promotion could even come close to the talent we had.
Well,
now, I don't know if I agree with that in terms of talent, but he's right. It made them look like a second-rate promotion.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
It made them look like we are minor league. We know we're minor league. We want a major league person to give us credibility. And we know it's not going to happen, but we're trying to get this rub through embarrassing you. All right, some of the things that happened in December, there were some really low-budget props. I think we may have mentioned that in the first year of ICW. So here's a low-budget prop. You get a T-shirt that says BRAT on it, and Rip Rogers, if he loses a match on television, has to wear a shirt that says BRAT on it. And Lanny interferes in one of his matches, and poor Rip Rogers has to wear a shirt that says BRAT. So that was how he was humiliating the heel, was making him wear that T-shirt. So, whew.
That must have been big in Angelo's youth. Yeah, remember when they called us brats? Hated that.
And then we have the Wee Willie angle, the infamous Wee Willie angle, when he wasn't torturing poor Buddy Landel. He'd been part of the crew pretty much from the beginning, and he's Garvin's doing some things with Wee Willie, and they're doing some things to humiliate Savage, and that was the kind of the weird psychology of the Garvin Savage feud. Savage is the world champion, but he's always angry with Garvin because Garvin's always outsmarting him, but Garvin's never the world champion.
Right.
So they use Willie as some part of angle to get Savage beat on TV or humiliate Savage. But at the end, Savage hits his top rope elbow on Wee Willie, and it looks like he has killed Wee Willie.
Right.
And later this will actually be like an article in like the local paper, like what happened to Wee Willie.
Yes, I actually have that article here in my notes. I grabbed it just yesterday, honestly.
So Izzy said years later, Wee Willie needed to go into surgery. Promotions didn't offer health insurance or anything like that. In order to help him with his medical bills, they did the thing where Randy came off the top rope. Then they had a collection to help him with his medical bills. So that was, pretty clever way to get some sympathy on Wee Willie and have people try to help him out.
Well, they ruined it for me because I'm envisioning just the storytelling here from the paper. The way they break it down is, it's like Garvin's in a match, I believe with Doug Vines. I think it was Vines. And they spill to the floor, and Wee Willie is acting as the manager for Ron Garvin in this match. Yes. And the way it's described is Wee Willie's out there in a top hat, I guess. And so all you can see from the camera angle is just this top hat over the ring apron there. But so he climbs up into the ring for some reason while the other two are out of the ring. And in comes Randy Savage, attacks Wee Willie, and drops, I guess, one of the more legit stiff elbows. We got to make them believe you're in the hospital for the reason. So I guess he just... all of his weight, Randy Savage comes crashing down, and I'm sure it hurt inside poor Wee Willie there.
Poor Wee Willie. Yeah, well, thanks for the specifics. I didn't remember or hadn't seen that angle recently. December, the kind of the last piece of the puzzle for the first generation of ICW talent comes in under the name of George Gray or Crusher Broomfield, or later known as One Man Gang. And then Hakeem, I guess, was the other.
Hakeem, the African Dream, man. Yeah, can't forget about Hakeem.
So he had debuted in November 30th in Manchester. Manchester seemed like a town they would do a lot of experimental stuff in.
A lot of experimenting.
Yeah. They would run like they would have different people in the card there, or had different types of matches. And I think, it was just like, okay, we can do anything in this place. But he had started as George the Giant. And the way he got into the promotion was Jay Eagle out of South Carolina was one of the guys who would work underneath it as enhancement talent at some of the ICW shows. And he would bring people with him to work underneath. And George was not even scheduled to work at the show, but Savage looked at him and he found out they'd been working in outlaw shows in South Carolina, and he gave him a job. And, he stood out there because there weren't giants in ICW, right?
He's like legit 6'10" or something like that. He's a big dude on top of the 500 pounds.
Right. So, it's not like, like the WWF got to be where you've got 10 guys that look like giants, and it's how does anybody stand out? So just due to his size alone, he was an imposing figure.
Well, he certainly wasn't going to come in and work underneath, that's for sure.
No, and that's really, he was still like living at home with his mom and been out of high school for a year or two and started in ICW wrestling. He does tell a funny story, and this when he left ICW wrestling, he had absolutely no money. He was going to Mid-South, and he was sleeping in his car somewhere.
Wow.
And the cops tell him, hey, you can't sleep in your car here. And he's like, well, I don't have any money to buy a hotel room. So somehow they got a hold of Grizzly Smith, and he put him up somewhere for the night or something. But poor George didn't even have nothing to get to the city with for his next town.
He'd do okay moving forward, though. He'd do okay.
He would do okay. Here's a show. This is just kind of a typical card that they're running at this time. This was Christmas night at Louisville, the Commonwealth Convention Center. And from what we've heard, they never drew well in Louisville. Rick McCord versus the Miser, Rip Rogers versus Buddy Landel, Orton versus Piz Whatley. If Whatley wins, he gets a TV title match, so that's an easy way to put Pez over and not lose the belt.
Right.
Leapin' Laney and George Weingroff against the Devils duo, which as we said was a pretty impressive heel team for that time and place. And Savage versus Garvin, and of course because it's Louisville, they're advertising the $100,000 challenge. That's kind of some of the major things that happened in the year from ICW, but there were things happening outside of ICW that were interesting as well.
Do tell.
So have you ever been to Milwaukee?
I have never been to Milwaukee, but I saw this poster online just the other day.
Yeah, it's a nice town. A lot of beer drinking in it. But there was a guy named Al King Kong Patterson who promoted a show in Milwaukee that made ICW look like the Boston Gardens. You want to talk about low budget television. But he starts getting some ICW people on some of his cards. So I just want to read this whole card because it's just
gosh.
fun.
Yes.
So
my God, I'm looking at some of the names.
September 6, 1980, Milwaukee Auditorium. Opener, the Italian Bomber versus Johnny Valez, I guess. Bad Brain Lucas versus, quote, the Mexican champion.
No, just the Mexican champion.
Yes. Indian Pete versus Doorknob Nixon.
That's my Indian Pete versus Pete. He's an Indian named Pete, by the way. Doorknob Nixon may be my new favorite wrestling name of all time.
That's a good one. Jeff May versus Randy Atlas. Randy Atlas is not a bad name, is it? Reminds me of somebody. And then Bob Orton Jr. versus Ron Garvin. King Kong Patterson versus Randy Savage. And then a, quote, 20-man battle royal.
Well, there's only 12 guys on the card, so I'm scared to think of who else filled out that battle royal.
There's actually a match of Savage and King Kong Patterson on YouTube.
Oh, my God.
And King Kong Patterson, wow. You think Savage can have a match with anybody? No. Wow. There are limits to human ability.
I need to go find this. I can't believe it's on tape. I got to go check that out.
Yeah, it is out there, and it's ugly. So Rip Rogers, Randy worked for Al King Kong Patterson in Milwaukee. Al didn't have enough money to pay him.
Oh, boy.
So Garvin went up and got the cage, the ICW steel cage that we had for years. It was Al King Kong Patterson's cage. We were operating on a shoestring.
So basically, if you can't pay us, we're just going to take your cage here, and you're not going to do a damn thing about it.
Can you imagine standing up to Savage and Garvin saying, sorry, can't pay you.
Can't pay you that $20, but you can take this, however many $100 of steel here that we had put together. Okay, well, I mean, then there you go. That's how it's just like the box. everything came out of the box in ICW. It was the same box. They just recycled that box. They kept it over in the corner, and they just pull it out and use it whenever they needed it.
Yeah. Then December 14th, Savage and Garvin appeared in Kenosha, Wisconsin for Al King Kong Patterson. So they went back several times.
Well, they wanted to see what else they could take, Steve. They were like, what do you think we can take this time?
Got any belts? Any ring trucks?
We need new title belts,
Yeah, and then there was some appearances in Malden, Missouri for Henry Rogers, who we often enjoy talking about. December 16th, I wish I had a time machine and could go back.
Oh,
and
my
see
God, me too.
Because I was 45 minutes away and had no idea these things were happening.
Awesome.
So Rip Rogers, Big Boy Williams, Bob Orton Jr., and Pez Whatley appeared for him on December 16th. From what I've heard, the Poffos used Henry Rogers' wrestling license in Missouri, so that was probably a trade-off. And then January 3rd, Savage, Rick McCord, Debbie Combs, and Donna Day worked in Malden.
So we're moving into 81, but it's it's hard to picture Bob Orton because I've seen the Malden results. Like I've seen years worth of Malden results, and the Black Panther and the yada yada and all this stuff. And Bob Orton, it just like I wouldn't even have believed it if I'd saw it in the print. I would have thought, oh, they're pretending some guy is Bob Orton here because here it is, man. It's crazy.
Well, Rip recently did say that they had a guarantee. He didn't say what the guarantee was,
right.
But
I guarantee you'll have a match.
That's right. So somebody had a listing of times that Savage appeared in Wisconsin, September, October, December 1980, and even into 81, January, and then there's a June shot that did it in 1981. So it's really weird.
Yeah.
You're running your own promotion, and then you're driving all the way to freaking Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine they were flying them up there.
No.
Very, very, very strange.
Yeah, that's very peculiar. Maybe they were trying to test the water, see if they could kind of take over Milwaukee up there. I don't know, because that's Vern country, so, right?
Yeah. But like I say, boy, it was a rough product. Take a look at that sometime if you think you've seen some low budget wrestling. So we wanted to again kind of talk about one of the main problems with ICW is the opening montage of the show was fantastic. We talked about that.
Right.
You've got mud pits. You've got a wrestling bear. You've got fireballs. You got Savage wearing a snake. You got Pistol Pez jumping through ropes under, doing a dive before dives were really a thing. So, the intro was fantastic. But the first time I met Rip Rogers, he said, we didn't know anything about television production. And the announcers acted like they were talking about a chess match.
Yes.
They had so little emotion into what was happening on the screen. It was like, oh, Savage has a chainsaw, and it looks like he's going to saw off Ronnie Garvin's arm. That may be illegal. There's a lot of blood in the ring. That's how they would call something like that.
Depending on.
On the babyface side, we mentioned Garvin was difficult to understand. Lanny would sound like a frustrated community college English professor, making literary references. And
that's another thing. Talk about a shoestring budget, like Rip Rogers was saying. When they would go to the arena footage, a lot of times Lanny would be doing the voiceover work. So he'd be doing commentary when you could clearly tell it's Lanny because when he's cutting a promo, it's the same voice. And here's Lanny talking about a match involving Lanny, right? So it's just really
right.
Weird.
Yeah, he could not cut up a fired up babyface promo. He just didn't have it in him.
Boy, he found that genius character though. He got that. And he nailed that.
He did. That was good stuff. The inner poet came out at some point. But that's one of the reasons why I think that the promotion never connected outside. You look at Memphis and you look at the studio reaction and you look at the announcers and how they put things over, and you compare that to 15 people who look like they're at a funeral watching squash matches on ICW TV.
Yeah, and
it just doesn't translate. I did list here's some of the places that they worked. As I said, they started to branch out. They were in Cave-In Rock, Illinois for one show, so they're going into Southern Illinois.
They did a show at the There's hyphens in there and everything. Okay.
Yeah, they went to Warner Robins, Georgia, and I'm sure they're probably at the military base on the 4th of July. So somebody probably had a connection to get a wrestling show into there. Right. Johnson City, Tennessee, Bristol, Virginia. So they're in Illinois, Virginia, Missouri. This is when they start really spreading out through that mid-America states area where they were at.
People bitch and complain about that schedule that Bill Watts had, and Bob Roop really shits all over the Amarillo schedule. He said that was, for him, that was worse than the Mid-South schedule, like the driving, the trips up and down the road. But this doesn't look fun, and you're making a whole lot less money here in ICW than you were for Bill Watts or the Funks.
No, these are some serious long road trips. And a lot of these are not interstate road trips. They're, you're going through, a lot of small towns.
Hills. The mountains.
Yeah. Yeah. This is slow moving. This is, I don't envy them. So who do you think had the most main events for ICW in 1980?
Let me think about it for a minute.
I think you're right. Randy Savage, I have 150 that I found. I'm sure there's more. Ronnie Garvin was next. Lanny right behind. Bob Orton Jr. had a lot. 89. Rip Rogers, Pez Watley, George Weingroff, Bob Roop had 45, and then it goes down from there. But so those are your key kind of headline guys.
George Weingroff, more main events than Bob Roop. I'm going to have to give Bob shit for that one.
Oh, yeah. Well, he was tied to Lanny.
That's true.
And they were doing a lot of those tag team main events. I don't think George was in a lot of single main events, but yeah. So to talk about the crew a little bit, like I said, Crusher Broomfield, George Gray was kind of the last piece.
Yeah.
Here's a quote on Cornette on the crew. Lanny was a heck of a worker back then. Savage was incredible in the ring. Bob Orton Jr., one of the best workers in the business. Ronnie Garvin, they got him over in Knoxville, and he did the brawling shit and the crazy angles. People thought he was nuts and a badass. Andre, the Giant, came in and sold for him. Ronnie Garvin kicked the shit out of Andre in Knoxville. When he turned babyface, he was a top guy. Roop was a shooter. He'd been everywhere. Yeah, those guys, plus Rip Rogers. All those guys were in great shape. Rip was a good young talent. The rest of the card fell off bad. Doug Vines and Jeff Sword were a solid tag team with their manager Izzy Slapawitz, the Devils duo. Izzy was fun. So it's kind of neat that the Cornette puts over Izzy, who was, such a weird, unique character.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
Cornette, George Gray was Crusher Broomfield. He reminded everybody of Crusher Blackwell. You could tell he was going to be a star. One of the Big Boy Williams, I love his real name, Ralph Derryberry. Derryberry. What a name. So he would come in and out of ICW. He'd started with the Culkins in 78, and he worked in Memphis in 1984 as the Animal.
Okay.
So he was doing the makeup gimmick back in Memphis at that time. And I think we talked about Tony Peters before. He only worked in the East Tennessee.
Right,
He was working. Yeah, and he worked underneath for Crockett in 1981. So that was his last time of being in any sort of big position was the All-Star crew. So last time we talked about how cheap the Poffo family was.
Sure.
Now we'll get into some of the other sides of Lanny and Angelo today. So Lanny said, I didn't create the moonsault. I stole the moonsault from the Tiger Mask versus Dynamite Kid match. I wasn't an innovator, and I also wasn't a perfectionist. My moonsault wasn't as good as Tiger Mask because a lot of people, give him a lot of credit for being one of the early people to use the moonsault. He's just I just stole it from this other guy.
He's still the first guy I ever saw do a springboard, though.
Yeah. Lanny had some interesting gifts, that's for sure. George Weingroff. Lanny wasn't as intense. He really didn't give a shit. He was pushed into the business by his brother and his father. They just dominated his life. And you'll kind of see that theme from other people that, like Lanny almost just didn't even want this life, but he didn't have a choice. Like, this is what we do, and so you're going to do it.
Yeah.
Bob Roop, Lanny didn't have that star factor that Randy did. Randy was hardcore. What you saw with Randy is what you got. Tim Tyler, the announcer. When I first got a chance to talk to Lanny's mother, she said, Lanny is the quiet one in the family, and Randy is just nuts. That's the term she used. So even his mom's like, this dude's out of here. George Gray and Rip Rogers put over Lanny's punches. George Gray, Lanny probably had one of the best punches in professional wrestling. And Rip always says Lanny had the best working punch in the business.
That's weird. When I think of work punches, I can't even picture Lanny's punch. So now I'm going to have to pay attention to that next time I watch a match.
Yeah, and the thing was, if it was so great, it wasn't sold like it was so great.
Right.
So something was missing there, since normal people are, if you're going to say who are the best punchers in the business, Lanny's name's not going to come up a lot.
Yeah.
Tim Tyler, Lanny just did what he was told. Angelo never said much. Angelo, to me, was just the financial man. Lanny, I thought my father should have hung it up years before he did, but he loved it so much, I didn't have the heart to tell him. George Weingroff, I love George Weingroff's quotes because he just gets right to the point. Angelo was so routine. He did the same damn thing in every match. And our friend Bob, Angelo didn't have to work very hard to hide the fact that he was a jerk. So again, Bob
that seems to be the general consensus. I mean, even the people that affectionately love Angelo for whatever the reason may be, still, even without calling him a jerk, just basically discussing him, it sounds like he could be, kind of a jerk. But it's, going back to Lanny really quickly there, in basic conversation with Bob Roop throughout several different episodes, you get the feeling that, I don't want to say Lanny didn't want to be part of the wrestling business, but that Lanny was just kind of there. It was Angelo and Randy who not only ran things, but, had that drive, or, that they get upset, they get paranoid, et cetera, et cetera. And Lanny was just kind of over here because every time Bob starts to talk about the family, he goes, well, probably not Lanny. Lanny, it's like, so he keeps leaving Lanny out of it. Right.
Yeah, it's like one father and son were exactly alike, and the other son was just like, I got to put up with this. Yeah.
I'm going to stand over here and write my poetry.
Yes. Let me reference Walter Mitty in my interview. That'll sell some tickets.
There you go.
End of the year, of course, Savage is the world champion. Lanny and George are the tag team champs. Orton is the TV champ. Ronnie Garvin is the Southeast champ. I mean, that's some really good talent, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
absolutely.
That's some really good talent. So you've got some good people at the top, and from what I have heard, 80 and 81 may have been their best years. Certainly, 81, a lot of the guys start to leave. In the beginning of 83, everything will really start falling apart, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But I think this is probably a good place to end up this week, and
absolutely.
We're going to get heavily more into talking about different perspectives about Randy Savage next week, because we got to talk more about Randy Savage.
I love it as we move into 1981, more from Randy. I mean, I still have all my notes here. I've been taking on the announcers and the referees and some of the interesting stories that go along with those. Like I said, I found some, I just sent you a couple little clips from some newspapers on Edgar Wallace, who is the African-American announcer there. And Tim Tyler did an interview with the Genius cast, Lanny Poffo. So he actually has an interview out there, if you guys can find it, on the old Lanny Poffo podcast. It didn't last too long, but Tim Tyler was actually a guest on there. So that's kind of
cool. Very cool. Very cool.
So, yeah, we got a lot of things. And I did take some notes on some of the fans writing down their accounts of some of the angles that took place. And if you guys haven't heard of the ICW angles, boy, you ain't heard nothing yet. So we got plenty to jump into. And, hey, we haven't even gotten to Radamias. So we've got a lot to do.
Oh, my gosh. There's so much more fun stuff to get into. That's for sure.
Well, Steve, I appreciate you doing this with me. I couldn't have more of a fun time with somebody talking ICW than you, I don't believe. So I'm looking forward to seeing what 1981 brings us the next time around.
It's going to be a fun ride, that's for sure. We're gonna have a sugar hold in 1981.
Oh my, here we go. Oh my boy. All right, guys, we'll be back soon. More regional wrestling on the way. More ICW around the corner.